Happy Wednesday, folks, and welcome back to #AskGSM here today for November 20th, 2024, episode 573. I'm Graham GSM Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well and having a great week so far. If you want to send in a question to the show, you could do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with #AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. Drop a comment on the post. I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your comment down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. So let's get right into it here with Micah Does It from YouTube. Their first question was, I just saw the fans at an MJF meet and greet are acting soft, S-A-W-F-T, soft, he spelled it, after MJF dropped a WWE Championship belt on the floor. My question to you is, could MJF work in WWE? Because he would have to be full 100% heel, similar to Chris Jericho 2008 and Randy Orton 2009. Would WWE allow MJF to be MJF fully, or make him, again, S-A-W-F-T, soft, version of himself, flipping off fans and throwing water on fans, etc., he mentions. So if MJF were to come to WWE, basically you're asking, would it have to be a softer version of than the current character we know in AEW? The answer is yes. We would not be able to get the exact same version of MJF with stuff that he says, stuff that he does in public. The WWE Championship belt thing, I mean, it wasn't ideal, but it wasn't that big of a deal. I mean, if that was my fucking belt and MJF dropped it on the floor, first of all, I'm not really sure why you would want him to take a picture with your WWE title belt anyway. He doesn't work for that company. And he is a heel. He's constantly in character. Now, if he dropped the fucking thing and he broke it, and that's a $500, $600 belt, then maybe we could have a different conversation. I assume he probably would have paid for it, I would imagine. I mean, that's a pretty expensive fucking thing to break. Like, for example, I actually met MJF the one and only time. I met MJF 5 years ago. This was right after he signed with AEW. He was still doing indies at the time here in Connecticut and just the Northeast in general. And he was at this show, and I had my Intercontinental Championship belt, the replica belt that I have, the one with all the signatures on it. I had it signed that day by Bret Hart. So I took a picture with MJF, not with the belt, I don't think, but it was on the table, and he made a comment. He's like, "Oh, get that opposition championship off of my table." He didn't pick it up. He didn't throw it. He didn't drop it. So it wasn't the exact same situation, but he was still in heel mode even at that point 5 years ago, and this was before he really blew up into what he is today. But to answer your question, if he would have to kind of change his style and adapt to the WWE style if he were to go there, the answer is yes. Would they allow him to be most of what the current character is? Yeah, I mean, I don't think he would be out on WWE TV like making sex jokes or telling the same stories that he would a couple of years ago, like where he was like, "Oh yeah, I got into a car accident while this woman was giving me head, and then we got into a car accident, I got out, and I didn't even check if she was okay," kind of implying that she died, and he didn't give a shit. He obviously would not be able to tell stories like that, and even that story in and of itself was kind of odd. I'm not really sure what that had to do with I think that was during the Daniel Bryan feud, during the Bryan Danielson feud in early 2023. And it was like, okay, like what did that really have to do with anything? I'm sure that there was a point to it at that point in time. But anyway, stuff like that would be a no-go for him in WWE, which is fine. I think he's talented enough where if he were to come to WWE, I think he would make the most of it and still be a great heel, still be a great babyface, even though his material would be limited compared to what it is in WWE, or rather in AEW at the moment. I still think he would be able to make it work. I mean, Jericho wasn't doing the same shit. You mentioned Jericho 08 or 09. Those guys were not saying the sort of shit that MJF was doing, that he is doing on TV in 2024. I mean, the stuff that MJF says and does in meet and greets is far different than what those guys were doing outside of the ring, in the ring, back at that point in time, because even then WWE was still a PG product. I mean, it's a PG product today. They have a lot of leniency with some of the shit that they do, whatever. But yeah, I think he would have to adapt his style ever so slightly, but not enough to where, it would be a watered down quote unquote version of MJF compared to what we have in AEW, but not to the point where he's the Miz. I feel like to think that he would be the Miz in WWE if he were to go there is just not fair. I think they would allow him to be most of what what makes MJF MJF. I think they would allow most of that, even outside of the ring stuff, in WWE. Probably to avoid a lawsuit, he might not be doing some certain shit and meet and greets like the championship belt stuff. But I would imagine for the most part they would allow him to keep character and still be a dick to fans without like putting his hands on them, and he never really gets too out of hand anyway. Your second question, thoughts on Mike Tyson versus Jake Paul? It was boring. I mean, most of it was boring. I was really hyped going into it, and I'm not a boxing guy, but I think a lot of people were thinking the same thing going into it. Like, it was a must-see event. Everyone's talking about it. You're going to check it out. In the first round or two, it's like, okay, Mike Tyson is getting some punches in. He might actually knock out Jake Paul after all, blah, blah, blah. And then it was just kind of nothing. And I don't know if that's normally how boxing works, but I mean, you don't normally box people that are fucking 30 years your elder. Mike Tyson was just out there looking like a shell of his former self. The guy hasn't boxed in, close to 20 years. And, he was obviously tired. He was already injured earlier this year, not to give him excuses. But the only real reason as to why the fight happened was it was a cash grab for him to make $20 million or whatever it was. And for Jake Paul to make money, for them to get attention, for people to sign up for fucking Netflix and watch the stream. Even though it crashed for a lot of people, it didn't for me personally. And I was watching the fucking hotel Wi-Fi. Because like I said last week, I was away last weekend. So I watched it at the hotel, and it still held up. I mean, not shockingly, the Wi-Fi held up, and the stream largely did not crash. It did pause at a few different points, but for the most part, it was fine. But the actual fight failed to live up to expectations. I probably should have tempered those expectations, knowing the age difference between the two. But Mike Tyson, in the press conferences, including the one that I was at a couple of months ago at the Javits Center in New York City when they were doing like the press conference and shit, even at that point, it seemed like he had still had some magic there as far as some of the shit that he was spewing and, slapping Jake Paul at the press conference or the weigh-in rather the night before. It was pretty, intense shit. They did a great job of building it up, that's for sure. And then the fight happens, and it was largely uneventful. To the point where, like, in the last 10 seconds, Jake Paul knew he had it in the bag and knew that Mike Tyson wouldn't fucking punch him. So he just spent the last 10 seconds bowing to him instead. That was kind of cringy. But the overall thing was a disappointment, but I probably should have known that going in. I probably should have expected that going in, knowing that Tyson is as old as he is. And Jake Paul, like, he gets, not that he's a terrible boxer, but he's obviously facing people where he has the advantage, whether it be people that aren't that good, people that aren't boxers by nature or by trade or whatever, or people that are past their prime like Mike Tyson. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if there was some sort of agreement in place to where he had said, hey, Mike, I won't, like, beat the shit out of you. I won't embarrass you, but, like, don't embarrass me either. Let's just have a clean fight, a very boring fucking fight. But, like, let's go out there and have a fight and just make money off it. You don't have to give it your 100%. Let's just give him a show. And unfortunately, that show wasn't very exciting. Jordan B. from YouTube, his first question was, are you surprised that The Miz has not broken Chris Jericho's record of having the most intercontinental title reigns yet? I'm not going to lie, I thought Miz would have broken that record by now. I am surprised. I mean, he's been at 8 since, 2017, 2018? That was 6 years ago. He won his 8th Intercontinental Championship back in 2018. So you're telling me, wow, so Miz won his first IC title back in 2012. So he won 8 fucking Intercontinental titles in that time. That's crazy. I'm trying to think, like, he won it that summer, lost it to Kofi. I guess he won it for a day in 2013, because Kofi lost it to Wade, who then lost it to Miz for a day. So that was Miz's second IC title reign. And then he won it, for a third time in 2014? I think he won it in 2014, lost it, and then he had a couple different reigns in 2014 that probably brought him up to 5. I know this wasn't your question, but I'm just kind of thinking out loud here. In 2015, was he champion? I don't think so. I think in 2016 he was champion because he won it from Zack Ryder on the post-WrestleMania Raw, so that would have been 6. He lost it to Ziggler, a lot like he did in 2014, and won it back from Ziggler. So that would have been 7 or 6 or 7. I guess 7. And then he lost it to Ambrose, got it back from Ambrose, and got it from Reigns. So yeah, I guess that would have been 8 reigns in like fucking 6 years, which is crazy. So he lost it in 2018 to who? Seth Rollins. and then didn't get it back and hasn't won it back since. So yeah, I am surprised that he hasn't broken that record. If anyone's going to break that record, it's him. I'm not even sure who's remotely close to getting 8 reigns. I think Wade Barrett, Booker T, Jeff Jarrett, Rob Van Dam, Jeff Hardy all had like 5 reigns. None of those guys are ever winning that championship again, I don't think. So, no, and even then, they're at like 5. Miz is at 8. So yeah, it's not like Miz hasn't been on the show either. Like Miz was WWE champion, albeit for a cup of coffee in 2021, but he was WWE champion. He's been tag team champion several times. He just hasn't won back the IC championship. So at some point, I think he will tie the record or break the record. You would think with how petty Vince McMahon is, that as soon as Chris Jericho went to AEW or New Japan, probably AEW, because New Japan he was cool with. Apparently he felt like betrayed when Jericho went to AEW. It's like, get over it, dude. But like you would think as soon as Jericho went to the opposition, with Vince McMahon being as petty as he is, he would have had Miz win the championship and then win it again just to break Jericho's record so they wouldn't have to talk about Jericho as having the most amount of reigns as Intercontinental Champion. But they didn't do that. And again, it's not like Miz got hurt or he left the company. He's still there, and he's still in a pretty steady spot in the mid-card on that show, on Raw and on SmackDown, but he hasn't won back the belt. At some point, I think he will. He did lose that match. He contended for the championship twice last year. I think it was last year. I know it may have been on the day one edition of Raw, but I know it was at Survivor Series and maybe again on Raw a couple of weeks later. I think it was a couple of weeks later on Raw. But they had 2 great matches last year, did him and Gunther for the Intercontinental Championship. The second match where he lost, the stipulation stated that if he lost, he could never again challenge for the championship as long as Gunther was champion. So he couldn't challenge for it until like Gunther lost it at Mania, but that was a Mania and he hasn't been back in the mix since. Because he was busy doing the Awesome Truth thing and then the turning on Truth and now the Wyatt 6 thing. Maybe at some point, if they can kind of gradually build him back up as a heel, he can win that belt. Probably not from Braun Breaker, but maybe at some point in 2025 or 2026. I'm sure Miz will still be there. He can win it again. And then maybe win it for a 9th time, or rather a 10th time just to break the record. Your second question. With WWE bringing back Saturday Night Main Event, do you think they should cancel the weekly show, the weekly main event show? Well, they should have canceled it regardless a couple of years, like years and years. I say a couple of years ago, they should have canceled it fucking 10 years ago. I mean, main event went the way of WWE Superstars in the sense that it was a big deal, like all their shows are. They're a big deal when they first start. Speed and Superstars, fucking Heat, and what else? 205 Live, and everything else they've done over the years. And then it became just a jobber show. And the quality has improved now compared to where it was a couple of months ago. I don't watch or review the show now because it's not on Hulu anymore, and I'm not going to watch it in fucking Peacock 3 weeks later. So I don't actually, that was the first time I have not watched the show. I didn't really watch it all that much when it first started. If I did, it was like on delay, and I didn't review it. I didn't start reviewing it until 2013. So I watched and reviewed the show for a good 10-year period, and it's still fucking going as that show. Even though it's been canceled off of Ion and the network, and even fucking Hulu doesn't want it anymore, they're still, I believe, taping the show before Raw and then just airing it on international networks. How does that even fucking work? Like, how do they not, like, I guess it's on Peacock like 3 weeks later. But at that point, the matches and shit are outdated. They're showing recaps from Raw. Like, that's fucking 3 weeks earlier. Like, who gives a shit? So anyway, they should have canceled it a long time ago regardless, just because it hasn't served a purpose in a very, very long time. Like, they canceled Superstars, but they replaced it with 205 Live. And then they canceled 205 Live and replaced it with Level Up, which is a bit of a more of a purposeful show. And then it gives a platform to the up-and-coming stars in developmental and NXT. Like, that makes sense. But, like, main event itself, if they don't have an equivalent for SmackDown, which they don't, then it's kind of pointless. So, yeah, you would think that if they have Saturday night's main event and then a main event show, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But at the same time, they don't even acknowledge WWE main event because it doesn't even air anywhere here in the United States aside from on Peacock 3 weeks later. So to WWE, in their perspective, in their eyes, it doesn't even exist anymore anyway. So it hardly matters that they have 2 shows of the same name in 2024, 2025, whatever. Emmanuel A. from YouTube, his first question was, he said, random question, but do you ever pay attention to movie budgets? I recently learned that Red One has a budget of $250 million. half of it possibly being because of The Rock's salary, and him reportedly being him just being constantly reportedly late and absent to film shootings, which caused delays. Also, Red One coming out this month instead of December is apparently because it was supposed to be a Prime Video release last year. The 2023 SAG-AFTRA strike apparently being the reason for Red One becoming a theatrical release. Also, since I learned a whole bunch of random Red One info, I learned that The Rock apparently pushed for the movie to be on IMAX screens after he saw Oppenheimer in Christopher Nolan's theater and thought, holy shit, Red One on this screen and with this technology could be game over. Yeah, I saw that. I saw that he said that. I don't know if he said that like in an interview, but I did see somewhere that like he got the idea to put that movie out on the big screen after watching Oppenheimer. Well, guess what, Dwayne? Oppenheimer is not Red One. Red One is not Oppenheimer. I saw both movies. I saw Red One over the weekend because we were away, and we saw it in this movie theater that we like to frequent every time we're in this area. And I enjoyed it for what it was. It was not a great movie at all. I think I gave it generously 2.5 stars on Letterboxd. John Ritlin, who asked a couple questions here, as always. I think he asked questions this week, but even if not, no, he did not this week, but he always asks questions. I think he gave it a 0.5 star on Letterboxd, and John is pretty straight to the point with that sort of stuff. But regardless, it was not a great movie. It's not worth seeing. Like if you like The Rock like I do, I like Chris Evans, I like... what's his name? I want to call him J. Jonah Jameson. J.K. Simmons is his real name. You'll probably like it for what it is, but there are far better Christmas movies out there. As far as its release in November, I mean, you're probably right on that as to why... I think I forgot that it was supposed to be out on Prime Video. For some reason, I thought it was a Netflix movie. I forgot that it was supposed to be a streaming movie, and then they put it out in theaters instead, which was a fucking mistake because... That movie that Rock did a couple of years ago, what was it, Red Notice? Did he do Red Notice, Red One? They're not the same thing, obviously, but they had that movie on Netflix that it was actually a pretty decent movie. I think Gal Gadot was in that as well, among other people. I think Ryan Reynolds. That was enjoyable for what it was. If it came out in theaters, I don't know if it would have done well. I think this would have done a lot better on streaming. And it's not like Rock is above that, because again, he did that Netflix movie a couple of years ago. But this just didn't have that same appeal. The plot was kind of weird. It wasn't like a great feel-good Christmas movie. I'm a big Christmas movie mark. This doesn't even crack the top fucking 30 Christmas movies I've ever seen. Like, not even close. It was fine for a one and done. I probably wouldn't watch it again unless it was on TV, and even then I would be shocked if it was even on TV. Felt a little long. Rock is still The Rock in the movie. He's not like The Rock, but like he's just playing himself as he always does. Chris Evans plays that douchey heel, so to speak, well. But the actual movie itself isn't great, so I'm not surprised that it did not make a whole lot of money. I did see all the tweets over the weekend. You mentioned like the movie budgets and shit. Do I pay attention to it? Like for this movie, I kind of go off of what I see on Twitter, which isn't always the best point of reference, obviously, but like I check my sources and shit. The movie budget stuff is interesting to see how much money went into making certain movies, and then for it to not have a return on investment is interesting. So like that Borderlands movie, which I heard was fucking god-awful a couple of months ago, that Jamie Lee Curtis was in, among other people. I think Jack Black as well. Not like in person, but I think he voiced the character in that movie. Regardless, the movie was awful. Made almost no money. It was out of theaters almost immediately. Yet they spent like, $100, $200 million on it. And that's not even including like marketing costs, which is like double the amount of production. So yeah, they did not, if you double the cost of production, usually it's what it normally is, because that you're including the marketing costs at that point. There's been a lot of marketing for Red One. I see posters, I see commercials, I see shit all over the place for this movie, and it was apparently not very well received, and I doubt it's like word of mouth, where they need to get the word out there how good this movie is, and more people will see it closer to December. I don't think so. I also don't buy this shit like, oh, it did worse in November because it's not Christmas season yet. It's not Christmas season, so it has to... I mean, listen, I prefer to watch Christmas movies in December. I probably would have seen this movie if it was still out in 2 weeks. I probably would have seen it in December or later, a little bit later in the month. But, like, we were away, so it just kind of worked out where we saw it the weekend it came out. But, like, this bullshit that it has to come out in December because it's a Christmas movie, I would normally agree with that, but like November, first of all, at this point in time, everyone's pretty much in Christmas mode at that point anyway. And second of all, fucking Elf came out in November, did it not? I mean, a whole litany of Christmas movies. Polar Express, which hasn't really improved over time, which I talked about before, and that's kind of a, I saw it in theaters when it came out 20 years ago. I enjoyed it. As they've gone older, I'm like, yeah, this isn't that good. But anyway, that made a whole lot of money. That was very successful. That also came out in November. Elf came out in November. Elf is one of the most successful Christmas movies of all time. That came out in November. A lot of Christmas movies have come out in November. And you can't really make the excuse, well, it's not December yet, and that's why the movie didn't do well. The Rock or whoever can make all the excuses they want. The movie was not good. It did not do well. Take the L and move on. And like you said, I guess the strike was a reason as to why it moved to theaters from streaming. If it's supposed to be a streaming film, you should probably keep it a streaming film. I think that Apple movie, actually, that Christmas movie, Spirited or whatever it was, with Will Ferrell and Ryan Reynolds, which was a nice movie. It was good for what it was. I don't think that would have done very well either if that was put in theaters back in 2022 instead of on streaming on Apple. Like, some movies, I think, work better in theaters. Some movies work better on streaming, and that Rock movie was one of them. The CGI was fucking goofy. Like, there was a lot of shit going on where, like, on the IMAX screen, it was okay, but it's not like, oh, I need to see Red One in theaters because it's going to enhance the experience that much more. Not really. Emmanuel's second question, do you think it's better for the New Day to break up? I remember they used to say in interviews that they wanted to be the one WWE stable that never breaks up, and they had to constantly deny storyline pitches where New Day would tease a breakup. However, do you think Xavier Woods and Kofi Kingston might have given into that idea now that Big E is unlikely to ever return and they're just lost in the shuffle as another tag team? Are they more, obviously, I mean, they're more into the idea of even teasing it because they've been teasing it for months now. I still am not convinced they're breaking up. And like, they've been teasing it so fucking hard for months now. I just do not believe that's the end game here. I think they are maintaining. I think they want to go as far as to tease it. But I think before they can even go through with it on that big anniversary episode, which is not next week, the actual New Day anniversary falls on Thanksgiving this year, actually. I think it was like SmackDown that year was probably filmed, I don't know. They're going off of the actual date the New Day debut happened, which would be on Thanksgiving this year. The date that it was filmed, because SmackDown was a tape show at that point, I think would be Raw this coming Monday, if not the day before, or on Tuesday or something. I think it would probably be Monday, actually. So it would make sense for Monday to be the big New Day anniversary episode. But they have not advertised it as such. They already have another match with Alpha Academy on that show. I think they're going to save it for after Survivor Series because they want that to be like a big angle with something going down. And it won't have anything to do with the pay-per-view, so they don't want to close out the show with whatever they're going to do and it have nothing to do with Survivor Series. So, honestly, I'm okay with that. If they want to do whatever they want to do in December, and if it's going to be something big, it's either Xavier Woods turning on Kofi, or Big E's coming back, which I think he is, and he's going to get them back on the same page. I don't think he's getting back in the ring. That would be an amazing spoiler. I don't think that's happening. I think Big E will come back on that show regardless, and I think he's going to get them back on the same page. Now, how do you close the show with that? I mean, I guess they just hug it out and they close out the show. The thing is, like, what's the end game there? The New Day win the tag titles again, they lose them, and then they're already right back to doing what they were doing before. It's just another tag team on the show, like you said. And that's fine. WWE needs tag teams on both brands. They're an established team. I think there is more you can get out of both guys on their own than you can as a tag team at this current point in time. They have faced all the tag teams on all three fucking brands for the most part. They've won all the titles. There's really not much more of note that they can do. I think it would be far more interesting if they were to go their separate ways, even if they don't split up, and you really try with Woods on his own. Woods is great. Like, he beat Rey Mysterio a couple of months ago. That was, that was entertaining. And not even a couple of months ago. It wasn't that long ago, but like, that was cool. That was unexpected. He was teasing the heel turn. It would be weird for Big E to come back and say, hey, let's all get along, and then they're all on the same page. And that doesn't really interest me, but that's where I see it going, unfortunately. I'm still not convinced. The bottom line is that they're going to break up. I still think that they're going to patch over their differences and move forward, but that Big E will have a big role to play in that, not in an active in-ring role, but like as a bystander, as a cheerleader, whatever. I just feel like that makes more sense. Joe M. from YouTube, his first question was, do you think it would be a massive mistake to have the OG Bloodline defeat the new Bloodline at Survivor Series? Say what you will about Solo Sikoa, but it's rare these days to have a top heel that fans actually hate like they do him, and I feel that he loses some of that aura if he loses yet another big match, whereas none of the members of Team OG Bloodline, Rollins included, lose anything in defeat here. I don't really care what the outcome is, honestly. Like, Roman's team at some point will need to give Solo Sikoa their comeuppance. But it's pretty clear that this War Games match will not be the end of the feud between Roman and Solo. We have yet to get a singles match between the two. Roman, we know, is winning that. Solo pinning Roman at Crown Jewel in that six-man tag team match was a great step in the right direction. Because you're right, Reigns, for that win anyway, did not need that win. He can lose nothing from being beaten specifically by Solo and not like Jay getting pinned or Jimmy getting pinned. That was a big win for Solo. But he needs to build consistent momentum. We saw the exact same thing over the fucking summer where Solo pinned Cody Rhodes in that tag team match, that six-man tag team match of Money in the Bank. And then he lost at SummerSlam. He lost on SmackDown to Cody Rhodes again. He lost to Bad Blood. He got fucking pinned in that match. So for every big win that he picks up, it feels like he loses the next 3 or 4 big matches that he has. And I would honestly probably prefer to see that team win. I agree. If the OG Bloodline team wins, I'm fine with that. But, like, is Bronson Reed only in there to take the pin? That's what it feels like to me. Bronson Reed was only added to the heel team so he could lose to Roman Reigns or whoever else, Rollins on the babyface side. I wouldn't want to see that personally. I would much rather see either Roman beat Solo or fucking pin Tonga Loa or whoever in that match. So, to me, the outcome doesn't really matter. I simply do not see Solo Sikoa at a top level currently. I think he's great. I think he's actually very good. I enjoy Solo more than most. He's gotten great heat. They've built him up mostly well. Again, he doesn't really have a whole lot of credibility because, like, even when he beat John Cena as another example, he decimated John Cena at Crown Jewel a year ago. Completely fucking destroyed the guy. And then what did they do with him after that? Nothing. Any match that he would have, he would lose. Either get pinned or lose by DQ. He did not win for a good fucking 3 or 4 or 5 months, did Solo Sikoa. Like, they need to follow up on this stuff. If he pins Roman at Crown Jewel, then you give him the win again at Survivor Series. Like you said, Rollins, Roman, anyone else on that team loses nothing from losing that match. So I don't know if it's imperative. Like, I was pretty hell-bent on Bronson Reed beating Seth Rollins at Crown Jewel. And then he didn't, which was stupid. Yeah, he beat Rollins on Raw, albeit with help from Solo Sikoa. That was nice. It's better than Rollins beating, Solo twice, or rather Bronson Reed twice. You could have had Bronson Reed win the first one and then done a non-finish for the second one. You didn't have to have Bronson Reed lose that first match. That was pretty stupid. This match, I don't really feel as strongly about, but I think there is a case to be made, like you said, where I think the new Bloodline, who isn't really nearly as established as the old Bloodline, could use this win more, needs that win more, and I would agree with you. It won't upset me if they lose because I'm kind of expecting it, but I think, do they literally need the win more? I would say so. I think I would agree with you on that. Joe's second question, what do you make of the backlash that The Rock has been getting publicly? He's become quite a polarizing figure despite being universally loved for the longest time. Red One seems like a movie people would have had a blast with 10 years ago, but there's next to no excitement surrounding it now. His attempt at taking over the DC universe and the fact that he pretty much plays the same character in every movie seems to have led to a lot of people souring on him. Well, I think there were a lot of factors. I'm not really down on Rock as much as most people, but it's because, like, the box office, Red One was just not an overly good movie. But then again, at the same time, you could say the same thing about a lot of his other movies that aren't all that great. Like, I enjoyed for what it was a dumb fucking movie. But, like, I enjoyed San Andreas for what it was. That was a blockbuster for the time. But I think you nailed it right there when he plays the same character in every movie. At a certain point, people are ready to move on. They've seen enough of Dwayne as a box office attraction. He plays the exact same character in every movie, which can be entertaining. But like the first few times, for the first number of years, they're in, 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016. it works. But then other actors come around who do it better than he does and have better movies, and then it's like, all right, I've already seen The Rock in a million other movies that are similar to this one. Why would I then go watch this one? And he doesn't really have great chemistry with a lot of these people. Kevin Hart, he does. They found great chemistry, but like him and Chris Evans, I didn't really sense a whole lot of great chemistry there. Him and Ryan Reynolds wasn't really as funny, I think, as he was expecting it to be in that Red Notice, Burn Notice, whatever the fucking movie was on Netflix I mentioned earlier. It was a good movie. I liked it for what it was, but again, it's a movie that a lot of people have since forgotten about in the 3 years since then. That just seems to be kind of a recurring pattern with him at this point. Like, he needs a big movie that is like genuinely good. He needs to do something different. Movie-wise, he needs to do something different. The superhero stuff clearly did not work out. Black Adam was not great. It was good for what it was. It was a solid film, but obviously it was a fucking bust. And he's done nothing with the DC universe since then that kind of got him out of there. Him going like above the DC universe, not the universe, but like the head of DC's head, if that makes any sense. Like, the whole trying to climb up in the pecking order shit, like that kind of soured the superhero universe on him. The Marvel fans don't want him. The DC fans don't want him because he wasn't like a great actor in the first place, but people were compelled to see how he would play Black Adam. But then you hear these reports like, oh, he doesn't want like to interact with Shazam at all. Well, that's the whole point of the fucking character. Like, do we really need a Shazam 2? Or a Black Adam solo film before we get him and Shazam in the same movie? No, we don't. Like, they could have just done that out of the gate, or at least done like a Godzilla. Like, I don't know. I guess they did that with Godzilla and King Kong, where Godzilla got 2 movies and King Kong had 1 before they built the big, monster movie in 2021, Godzilla versus Kong, which was, entertaining. And I kind of forgot about the sequel, which I did see earlier this year, but I totally forgot about it. But anyway, between that stuff and like, I think it was the Maui stuff, right? Like the Oprah Winfrey thing or whatever it was. I don't really know what happened there, but people weren't really happy about that. Just a whole litany of things. I don't think Rock's a bad person at all. And then you have like the wrestling thing where he comes back expecting to kind of resume the same spot that he's always had as the number 1 contender to the world championship. And he won't admit this. Like, he'll play into the idea that it was his idea, which it probably was for him to turn heel. But it was also his idea to be in that spot in the first place. Like, he created this fucking mess, and then he wants to give himself credit for fixing it. Well, then we wouldn't have been in this spot if it wasn't for you coming back at the worst possible time. So, like, the wrestling fans have resentment towards him, which he has since embraced as a heel, which is great, and he does great work as a heel. But, like, a lot of moviegoers don't really care about his movies at this point. Like, yeah, the movie would have been better received 10 years ago, but that's exactly the problem. The movies that were coming out 10 years ago aren't the same movies that are coming out today. There's a lot of movies that came out in the early 2000s, for example, that would not have worked as well 10 years later. Like, audience taste changes, and there's a lot of other movies out there. You're competing with streaming. It takes a lot more now compared to 10 years ago to get people to leave their house and go to the movies when they can just watch anything they want on streaming. Now more than ever. And when you have a movie that's as subpar as Red 1 was, I don't really blame people for not really giving a fuck about it, because if I wasted, I did, $10, $11 on a ticket, I don't really care because I thought it was fine for what it was, but there's a lot of people that are like, that sucked. I brought my kids to go see it. They didn't really care about it. I didn't think it was that good. What a waste. And they're not going to go see his next big movie. They will go see Moana, but I don't really think that's because Rock is a draw. That's just because it's Pixar and the first Moana movie, and he has a lot to do with that because he has a voice in the movie and whatnot. But people aren't seeing it for The Rock. They're seeing it because it's Moana, and he just so happens to be a voice actor in that film. So the Rock hate is interesting. I think a lot of it's unjustified. I don't hate The Rock, but there were a whole litany of things that didn't really do well. His show getting canceled was another thing, but that wasn't like a complete bust, though. His show lasted 3 fucking seasons, and I thought it was a good show. I enjoyed the show for what it was. There were a lot of historically inaccurate depictions on that show, but, I enjoyed it for what it was, and it clearly did well enough that they renewed it 3 times. It had 3 seasons across 3 or 4 years, so it wasn't a total bust. But the fact it was canceled said to a lot of people, like, oh, yeah, he's got nothing going on now, all of his projects suck. Like, he's still involved in a lot of promotional shit, like the shampoo thing, which is funny because he's bald, but, I don't know, that shit sells well, but he's involved in a lot of promotional shit and other products that do well that he slaps his likeness on, and That does well. But like the movie stuff, he's got to like take a step back and reevaluate. He was doing like 3 or 4 movies a year at one point between like fucking Jumanji 1 and 2, Jungle Cruise, Central Intelligence, Hercules, San Andreas, all this shit that he was doing. And I've seen probably every single one of those movies in the last 10 years that he's done. And a lot of them, they made a lot of money because those were like the big box office attractions of the mid-2000s, but again, of the 2010s rather. But in mid-2020s, when movies have to be really, really good to kind of compel people to leave their homes to go see, that shit ain't gonna fly anymore. No L from Facebook, who would be your top 5 picks to be the first U.S. Women's Champion on SmackDown? I don't know about top 5. I mean, they did announce the entire tournament on Friday's SmackDown and kicked off the tournament with Bayley winning a quarterfinal match. I would have said Candice, but she got eliminated, so not Candice. Bayley's obviously a front runner. Naomi's a front runner. I would still put the belt in either Chelsea Green or Michin initially. But RJ made a great point last week where I think it would mean more for one of them to beat an established woman to become champion. Whereas if they win the title, they may not have like this great first run before getting beaten by Bayley, which is like inevitable, or Naomi or whoever. Tiffany would also be a great choice, but she's currently Miss Money in the Bank, so probably not. So either Bayley, Naomi, Michin, Chelsea, Bianca, no, Jade, no. Tiffany, I'm going to put her as the 5th pick, but if she's Miss Money in the Bank, then no. B-Fab obviously was already eliminated. Elektra, absolutely not. She's not great, so no. Doesn't leave a whole lot of choices. I would have said Indy or Tegan, but they got fucking fired. So, yeah, those are probably my top 5 choices. Your next question, do you see Rhea Ripley playing a crazed version of herself like how Cody Rhodes did during his masked dashing gimmick? You're talking about how Rhea Ripley came back with a mask on Monday. No, I don't think so. I mean, the Rhea Ripley character as it is crazy, and she acts all aggressive and over the top and shit. I don't see her coming out as undashing Rhea Ripley with the, altered entrance music and acting crazier like Cody. He wasn't really crazy. He was more like depressed during his undashing gimmick days back in 2011. And even after a while, like the whole face mask thing, it gets old very fucking quickly. And after a certain time, you got to take the fucking face mask off. It just looks stupid. So hopefully it's a legit injury and that's a real thing as to why she has to wear it. But as a babyface, it doesn't work as well. As a heel, it works well because you can use it as a weapon. As a babyface, it just looks dumb. I mean, it looks dumb regardless, but it makes even less sense as a babyface. So, anyway, no, I don't see her becoming a crazed version of herself. She kind of already is crazy as it is. Maybe she can become more intense again. She kind of lost that edge for a little while there, and maybe this can allow her to get that back. We'll see. We'll see in War Games. Bobby S. from Facebook, he asks, your top 5 pay-per-view/PLEs from any company, any era of all time. Loaded question. I mean, Money in the Bank 2011 is up there. That's probably my number 1. I'm not going to include any NXT PLEs because I feel like that would be a majority of them. If I had to pick one NXT PLE, it would probably be TakeOver New York. I was there for that one. I've already answered like my top 5 takeovers in previous episodes in recent months, but like that one, Our Evolution, the Brooklyn one was great. I was there for that one as well. Dallas and Philly, the first Philly one, and the Toronto one, among others. All the Brooklyn shows were great. Probably TakeOver New York, that was an awesome one. If we're going to include any company here. For AEW All Out 2021, I was there for that as well in Chicago. Just an amazing night. That was like the magnum opus of AEW in terms of pay-per-views. They've had a lot of great pay-per-views, don't get me wrong. That was their peak. Punk's first match back, Bryan debuting, Ruby Riott showing up, Adam Cole's debut at the end, Christian Omega main event, Lucha Bros, Young Bucks Steel Cage tag title match. That show was awesome. So I would say that one. So let's see. Money in the Bank 2011. I said the NXT PLE, AEW. For TNA, you don't have to do like one per company, but I will. I'll say for TNA, I'm going to say TNA. I want to say Bound for Glory 2012. I was always a big fan of that show. If only because of that Bobby Roode, James Storm street fight they had. And that was overall a great show anyway. That was like the peak of TNA's popularity in like the early 2010s. So probably that one. I also enjoyed Bound for Glory 2010 and Bound for Glory 2011. That whole period I'm kind of nostalgic towards, so any of those shows. I'm trying to think of other pay-per-views from like TNA's history, but probably that one. And then for Ring of Honor, probably either Ring of Honor Final Battle 2015 or 2018 or their All-Star Extravaganza show. Probably that one from 2016 because that was my first Ring of Honor show in person that I attended. Had an amazing time. They had Ladder War in the main event. That was special. That was an overall really special time for Ring of Honor as well. So those might be my top 5. Like there's plenty of other WWE pay-per-views. SummerSlam 08, I love. Survivor Series 02 is one of my favorite pay-per-views of all time. And that was a show that I wasn't even a fan for. Like, I didn't start watching wrestling until years later, but I've gone back and watched that show a ton over the years. Maybe again before Survivor Series this year. I know the anniversary was a couple days ago, but, maybe I'll rewatch it soon. That show, WrestleMania 21, I really, really like. I'm trying to think of other pay-per-views. TLC 2011, I really, really enjoy. Trying to think of other shows. Extreme Rules 2012. I love, from 2016, Backlash. Backlash 2016, that was a special time for the SmackDown brand right after the brand extension was brought back. I love that show. TLC 2016 was also a special time. That was a couple of months later for SmackDown. 2017, not a whole lot. WrestleMania 40 was a lot of fun to be at this year. That was a great show overall. WrestleManias 38 and 39 were also great overall. Those are just a few. I know that was way more than 5, but those were the ones that came to mind. Christopher L. from Facebook, his first question was, he says, "Hey Graham, hope everything is going well and your week has been fantastic. Julia and Stephanie Vaquer have not been on the NXT roster for 3 months, and already they have headlined multiple episodes of NXT and have gotten rockets strapped to their backs since debuting. It's only a matter of time till a portion of the fan base will eventually turn on one of them. In your honest opinion, who do you see as the more believable heel, and who do you see turning first? I think Julia has more of a mean streak and villainous aura to her, judging by her entrance alone. What about you?" That's a great question, because I was thinking Roxanne Perez and Cora Jade are not long for NXT. They've already been there for like 3 years. Cora Jade's been there for almost 4 years. Roxanne's been there for 3 years in early 2022. So they both got to be main roster bound in 2025, early on in 2025, I would say, if not right after WrestleMania. So when they leave, the 3 women they've brought in, Zarya and Julia, Stephanie, have to fill in the gaps. They're all not going to be top baby faces at the same time. I would probably turn Zarya because she's a monster heel. But of those two, I would say Julia. I kind of see her more as a heel than I do Stephanie. Stephanie's awesome. She's also just fucking gorgeous as well. But I just don't really see her as a heel. Like she just kind of gives off the energy like a likable like persona. I mean, Julia's got that beautiful madness thing going as well. Not to say that she's not gorgeous too, but yeah, Julia, I could just see her being just a fucking bitch heel. Maybe both, but I would say probably Julia of those two. His second question was, I've noticed that not just in WWE, but in all of pro wrestling, there seems to be some continuous trope going on that the world champions or top champion of a division is constantly being pinned on live TV almost weekly. I know this is a way to secure a title opportunity to the one who pinned the champion, but I feel it's becoming way too common, thus losing the special moment. Do you feel this is becoming way too common, and do you think it makes the champion look foolish? I haven't really noticed it becoming common. It has with the women. Like Liv got pinned last week. Nia Jax got pinned by Naomi a couple of weeks ago. Not a big fan of that. It is more commonplace with the women, I feel like. It happened with Mariah May about a month ago. Mercedes, I don't think has been pinned yet in AEW, but I feel like it's happened a lot with the women more than the men. For the men, Gunther got pinned at Crown Jewel. I wasn't a fan of that, but that was just because they did that dumb champion versus champion gimmick, and they didn't really have a choice unless it was a non-finish, which would have been dumb. So yeah, Gunther got pinned. The only time Cody's been pinned, I think, since he became champion was by Solo, back at Money in the Bank. So yeah, I mean, I wasn't fond of that, but it made sense to give Solo a credibility boost. So it hasn't happened a whole lot with him. It hasn't happened a whole lot with Gunther. In AEW, who's the champion? John Moxley hasn't wrestled at all, has he? I mean, so yeah, I mean, I see the trope, and I hate that fucking trope as well. but I feel like it's happened a lot more with the women as of late in these companies than it has the men. The men, it's a bit more rare. They're booking their men's world champions better. I don't remember Danielson getting pinned in the fucking 2 months that he was champion for, or Swerve, I don't remember being pinned, if at all, during his reign. Joe, same thing. So it really doesn't happen all that often, but with the women it happens more than it should, and that is annoying. Your next question, what are your thoughts on Kenny Omega saying that AEW doesn't need him? I call bullshit. AEW absolutely fucking needs Kenny Omega. Kenny Omega being back will not save AEW, but they need the star power. Like, MJF came back, but then he immediately fucking disappeared to go film more movies or something, so he hasn't even really been on the show for the last month and a half. Adam Cole hasn't really lit the world on fire. Him being back has been fun, but he hasn't really struck that same chord and found that same magic that he had a year or two ago. The Jon Moxley thing has just been, I just don't care about that story. So, I mean, they have other stars. They have plenty of star power in AEW, but a lot of whom aren't really being utilized to their full potential, or aren't just around, or whatever the reason might be. My point is, they definitely need Omega more than New Japan does. New Japan's also in dire straits right now. They could use a bit of a boost and more buzz and whatnot, which Omega brings, but I don't watch New Japan, so I don't really give a fuck. I would have rather seen Omega return to AEW first before returning to AEW. Return to AEW first before returning to New Japan. So, I call bullshit on that. I could see why he would say that. He's like, oh yeah, they don't need me. I got a great thing going. He's not going to say the product sucks, but I just don't agree, because I think AEW definitely needs him more than he thinks. Your next question, would you consider Finn Balor and JD McDonough's tag team title reign a complete bust, or do you think it's all going to lead to something? No, it's been a bust. I mean, even for how as uninteresting overall as the Awesome Truth reign was, I mean, it was fine. But, like, even they were better champions than JD McDonough and Finn Balor. They defended the belts, 4 times? They beat DIY, they beat Authors of Pain, they beat a couple different teams. And they retained the titles a few different times. We have not seen Balor and McDonough defend the titles twice. Once. They won the belts in fucking, June? June. They won the belts, I think. Either June or early July. That was almost half a fucking year ago. And the only time they have defended those titles since then was against the New Day like a month or so ago. That's it. I think it was 2 months ago. And now they did crown new number 1 contenders in the War Raiders, but I don't know when they're doing that match. I don't even know what it would even really lead to. The War Raiders should be beating Balor and McDonough for those belts. I don't give a fuck about New Day beating them at this point. They already lost. I would much rather just see War Raiders win the championships, and I think they will. I hope they will. Because if not them, then who? I mean, there's other teams on Raw, but at some point, we got to move on from fucking McDonough and Balor as champions. They have done nothing with those belts. Say what you will about the SmackDown belts, but those belts are far more interesting and have been defended more than the World Tag Team titles on Raw. It's a problem. So no, that reign has been a total bust. I agree. Probably the biggest bust of a tag team title reign in, I don't even know how fucking long. It's been a long time. Let's put it that way. They've had some champions that weren't really great, but like Owens and Zayn were good champions. The Usos were great champions. Even Judgment, like the previous iteration of Judgment Day with Balor and Priest were better champions than Balor and McDonough are currently. They have just been a complete fucking afterthought on that show. A total waste of time. At Iwagu91, their first question was, do you see Frankie Kazarian being the one to end Nick Nimit's reign as TNA World Champion? I don't. I think it still should be Joe Hendry. I think it will be Joe Hendry. But the fact they're taking this long after he lost at Slammiversary and Bound for Glory and all these other shows, it's going to get to a point where people don't care. They really should have struck while the iron was hot. I was fond of them not doing it at Slammiversary, but it really should have happened at Bound for Glory, and it did not. That was dumb. Kazarian is world champion. I would love to see because he's earned it. But I think Joe Hendry should be champion. Could they put the belt on Kazarian just to put it on Hendry? Yeah, but that feels convoluted, and it might be a bit before that happens. So probably not. Your second question, ever since WWE has done War Games from 2017 onwards, it doesn't have a roof. Is it because of Hell in a Cell? That's a great question. I don't think so. I feel like they just don't do it with a roof. So it allows for them to do more spots like off the top of the cage, which they've done pretty much every fucking year since they started doing it again in 2017. I think it's more of like it looks better thing, and so they could do more spots. So they're not as limited. But it also might be because of Hell in a Cell, because Hell in a Cell kind of loses its luster if War Games is Hell in a Cell, but it's like 2 Hell in a Cell. So Hell in a Cell is like fucking nothing. At that point, just have a War Games match. I mean, a War Games match is like for multiple people, obviously. Hell in a Cell is for like a singles feud, usually, or tag team feuds or whatever. But no, I mean, it might be. I think it is a Hell in a Cell thing, but I think it might be more so at this point. With the men and the women for years now, they've always loved to do spots. They love doing spots inside of the War Games cages, off the top of the cage, to the people on the inside of the cage. So they're never going to put a cage back on top of it. That doesn't really bother me. It's basically 2 steel cages. The steel cage match itself has been so bastardized that no one gives a shit at this point anyway. The Hell in a Cell concept stipulation has also been bastardized. But it feels more special now, coming off that McIntyre Punk thing, that I understand not wanting to put a roof on top of it. That's fine with me. It might not be traditional, but it's fine with me. Your third question, should WWE bring back the elimination matches at Survivor Series? Abso-fucking-lutely they should. Honestly, I think if there was ever a match to do that with, first of all, Women's War Games should be a women's elimination match. Like, that just makes the most sense. The women's elimination, and even the men's elimination matches back in the day, were a mishmash of feuds from all the different brands. They did that for years. 05. I mean, sometimes the elimination matches were brand specific. They were in like the early years of 2000s, but from like 05 onward, they mixed and matched feuds from all the brands, Raw, SmackDown, and ECW. They did that until like fucking 2013. Around 2013, like they were doing that up until 2015, 2016, then 2016 they started doing the brand supremacy bullshit. But you know, when they used to mix and match feuds with people from different brands, I thought that was cool. It doesn't have to be like a full-on feud between 2 tag teams. Are there any stakes? No, and like the matches don't mean anything, but the elimination aspect was always entertaining, and it's been long enough since we had a standard elimination tag team match without any fucking brand supremacy bullshit or War Games or whatever that it would feel special in my opinion. There's just no need to force War Games if it doesn't make sense. This year, it doesn't make sense for the men's to be 5-on-5, and for the women, it doesn't make sense for that to be happening at all. That should be an elimination match. And also the Final Testament versus Final Testament of the Miz versus the Wyatt Six. That is a Survivor Series elimination match if I've ever seen one. Miz carrying Cross and AOP. I wouldn't put Scarlett and Nikki in there because if they tag in or one gets eliminated, then how does the other get eliminated? That just doesn't make sense. But I would do Miz, Cross, and AOP versus, Uncle Howdy, Rowan, Gacy, Loomis. I feel like that makes sense. They're not going to do it, but I feel like that would be cool. Bring back the elimination matches. I totally agree. Bill Meister, 88, as we wind down here with the last 3 questions from Bill. He asks, hi, Graham, do you think we'll see Nick Aldis in a WWE ring as an in-ring competitor again? I know we answered this question from Chris Van Vliet the other day, saying that he doesn't feel like he would be complete if he never wrestled again, and he's telling the truth. Like, he has to fucking wrestle again. It would be a total waste for them to not put Nick Aldis in the ring ever again. He is amazing as a GM, but why not have him wrestle occasionally for one big match or whatever? See how he does. I feel like he's tailor-made for the WWE system anyway, GM or not. But I feel like it would be a waste of what he can do if he never wrestles again. So, do I think we will see it? Yes, I do. I don't know at what capacity. Will it be soon? It should be soon. He's been the GM now for over a year. We're at a point now where it's like, all right, get the guy back in the fucking ring. We're at that point now, whether it be on a semi-regular basis, regular basis. Will he have a future on his own in WWE? Like, will he just immediately be buried as a mid-card competitor or under mid-card? Undercard, rather, whatever. Maybe, I don't know. But you won't know unless you try. So maybe you start him out as wrestling on occasion, like William Regal. William Regal was already a wrestler, but like when Regal was the GM, he would wrestle occasionally in 07-08. You could do the same thing with all this. I feel like they would be remiss not to try that. Like Adam Pearce, I don't give a shit about him getting back in the ring. I never saw any of his matches, I don't think. I don't care about Adam Pearce as an in-ring competitor. But Nick Aldis, I feel like, is being underutilized in his current role. For as great as he plays that character, I feel like there's so much more you can do with him in the ring at this point that they haven't really truly tapped into yet. Your second question, with Royal Rumble just over 2 months away, who would you like to see as a surprise entrant for 2025? That yearly annual question. I'm sure I'll have more answers as we get closer. But like AJ Lee's an obvious one for the women. We didn't see it last year. I'm still holding out hope that it will happen at some point. That would be fucking cool. So AJ Lee, I don't really know. I feel like a lot of the legends, Ken Shamrock I was hoping for this past year. We didn't get it. But that would be fun if we saw Ken Shamrock back in the Royal Rumble ahead of a Hall of Fame induction or whatever. Now that he's back on good terms with the company. Trying to think. Now, I was going to say Rhea Ripley, but Rhea Ripley's back now, so that's not going to happen. Big E is always an obvious one. Probably not going to happen, but that would be cool. Trying to think of who's out injured right now. Ilya Dragunov coming back as the Mad Dragon, John Cena style, returning well ahead of time would have been fucking awesome. I don't see that happening, but that would be awesome. And imagine him winning it and then facing Gunther at Mania. That would be crazy. Never going to happen, but that would be wild. Who else is out injured right now? AJ Styles, what is even going on with him? That whole injury thing sucked. Hopefully he's back before then, but we don't know what's going on there. I don't know who else is out injured that would return in the Rumble. But as far as alumni and stuff like that, I could see Jordan Grace being in it again. Joe Hendry from TNA, if he's still there at that point, which he should be, I think. He should still be under contract at TNA by that point. Joe Hendry in the Rumble, I think moreover than anyone, has got to happen. He'll still be popular by then. I think it would get a great reaction for the Rumble crowd. That would be awesome. And then someone from AEW, like Andrade came in this past year and returned to WWE in the Rumble. Naomi from TNA. Was also cool. She came in returning to WWE, but she was in TNA right before that. Like a Ricky Starks or a Wardlow, if they were free by then. Pentagon Jr., who I think is free. Ray Phoenix is not. But bring in Pentagon first. Why the fuck not? Why do they have to come in as a tag team? Pentagon being in the Rumble would be fucking sick. I don't see that happening, but just food for thought. Last question from Bill. He asked, non-wrestling question. With Christmas around the corner, it's time to get into the Christmas films on. Get the Christmas films on. He said, yes, even now in November, which I disagree, Bill. Even though it's November, I still wait until after Thanksgiving because I'm a psycho, but you're not in the minority there. Most people do. You asked, what are your go-to Christmas films, or what's your go-to Christmas film or films? And is Die Hard a Christmas film? Yes, it is, Graham, is what he said. We've had this question asked many times before here on the show. The answer is and always will be yes. Yes, it fucking is. I watched that movie most years. I've watched it a bunch in the last 5 or 6, 7 years. Just a great fucking film. I actually saw it in theaters for the first time because it came out so long ago. I don't even know if I was alive when it came out. I don't think so. But I saw it on a theater screen about a year ago. They were bringing it back. AMC was. I think it's like a fan favorite $5 film or whatever for the holidays. And that was fucking cool. Just a great movie. Just a great fucking movie. So, that's a great Christmas film. That's my go-to. One of my go-tos. My top 2 go-tos always will be Christmas Vacation and How the Grinch Stole Christmas. The 2000 one with Jim Carrey. Or Mike Myers, or it's Jim Carrey, right? That will always be my favorite Christmas movie. Christmas Vacation is a close second. Elf is up there. I don't watch that every year, but that's a great movie. Home Alone's a great one. And Die Hard. Those are probably my top 5. I actually, I can tell you right now, I made a list on Letterboxd because I'm obsessed with making lists and stuff like that. I made a list about a year ago of my top 25 or 30 Christmas movies. In order, I believe. Or maybe it wasn't in order. I have to check. But let me see. I'm going to my profile right now because I just thought of it. Let's see. Scroll down. We are at, favorite Christmas movies. Top 20. All right. So I think I did not do this in order. I just kind of organized it randomly. But I put, Grinch, Christmas Vacation, like I mentioned. Another go-to for me, it's not a good movie, but I love watching it every December. With my brother, we've made a tradition out of it every December 23rd, which is that Seinfeld holiday. God, I forget the name of it. The fucking miserable one. I forgot the name of it all at the top of my head. But instead of doing that, we watch Christmas with the Cranks. Not a good movie at all, but we love making fun of it every year. So That's up there. Violent Night was fucking awesome. That movie that came out 2 years ago, that is a great movie. I'm going to have to rewatch that one this year. That was a really, really good movie. Home Alone 2. I enjoyed Why Him and Office Christmas Party, both of which came out in 2016. Those are guilty pleasures of mine. Klaus, that Netflix movie, Alexa showed me that. Enjoyed that movie. The Santa Claus movies are also very good. The Tim Allen ones, I enjoy all of those, all three of them. Elf, I mentioned. Fred Claus, I liked. That came out in 07, I think. That was a long time ago. 'Twas the Night, Ultimate Christmas Present, both of which are Disney Channel original movies, but I enjoy those. Those are still guilty pleasures of mine. And then kind of just some random picks. Jingle All the Way, Santa Claus is Coming to Town, and The Year Without a Santa Claus. Those last two are classics, and I'll watch those whenever those are on. But anyway, thank you guys for checking out the show. As always, I appreciate it. We are closing in on that aforementioned holiday season, so support the show, support what I do, support the Wrestle Rant brand by buying a t-shirt today. A Halloween shirt is now available. We have the Wrestle Rant shirt itself. The link is down below in the description box. We're going to have a Christmas shirt up, I'm hoping, at some point in the next couple of weeks, so keep an eye out for that on the website. It's prowrestlingtees.com/WrestleRant. It's also available, like I said, in the description box down below. And on WrestleRant.com, just click the store app, the store icon at the top of the page. It will direct you to the store. Be sure to like this video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content. Most of the time. Some days I won't post stuff just because I'm busy or I'm away. Most of the time we do post stuff every single day, including hashtag AskGSM every single Wednesday. So if you hear the show, enjoy the show, want to support the show, and send in a question, you can do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. I know Blue Sky's the thing now. I think I created one a couple of years ago. I don't remember. I'm going to have to check that out. I'm not going to use it until I have to, but Twitter is my home, X, whatever the fuck you want to call it. You can always send in questions there. I'm not accepting questions on Blue Sky currently, but at some point, maybe we will down the road. Currently, no, but you can send them in through Twitter, Facebook as well, facebook.com/graham.gsm.matthews. Drop a comment on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not in the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop a question down below in the comment section in this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. With all that being said, folks, we got Thanksgiving coming up next week. I mentioned this last week. I'm hoping to record it earlier in the day on Wednesday and still have it up that day. So nothing should be different on that front, but if it is, I'll let you know. But currently, we should be able to do the show as normal next week, with you guys sending in the questions on Tuesday and then answering them on Wednesday, putting up the video that same day. Especially now that my laptop is just so much quicker and more efficient, I usually don't have an issue putting this stuff together and getting it up in a timely fashion. So until then, though, have a great one, guys. I'm Graham GSM Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.